welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Stedka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 291. It is July 1st. We have officially entered the summer months, and transfers are flying. The World Cup is flying forward. Got Scott alongside. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, how's your World Cup, my friend?
I'm loving life, man. Just singing some country road at the top of my lungs around my house, and I'm in full World Cup mode. So I've definitely been paying attention to things that are happening in the Spurs world, but like 99% of my attention is focused on international football right now, without a doubt.
I think that's where many people's attention is. I know TC's attention is there as well. He is Todd. He is here. He's at TC_Kashow. Todd, what's up, my friend?
Big World Cup guy. My guy Scott over there. Big World Cup guy. I'm good, brother. Any day.
No doubt, man.
You know, you can get together and talk about a fucking Harry Kane masterclass is a good day. I mean, there's a lot of good Tottenham stuff to talk about for darn sure, but from a World Cup standpoint, we've seen some pretty wild stuff over the course of this tournament so far.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week in that I think this World Cup is capturing attention mainly because of the convenience of it, with time zones and everything being what they are. But yeah, I'm making the effort to tune into some games, and especially now that we're deep into the knockouts, a couple days into the round of 32. We are recording this, as I mentioned, July 1st. We just witnessed the U.S. getting past Bosnia and Herzegovina 2-0, and despite having Florian Balogun sent off on a red card, they got the job done and have moved on, and they will face Belgium in the round of 16. We saw, you mentioned it, Harry Kane brilliantly bringing England back from the depths of hell against DR Congo, and they get the job done. And that sets up what I think is going to be just a whale of a match on Sunday evening in Mexico City, when England travel to the Azteca to face the Mexicans in a round of 16 clash. That is going to be an absolute scene. We've got tons going. You know, some Spurs players have already been knocked out of this thing, which I actually like as well. I mean, Bergvall and Sweden are done. Andy Robertson's coming back. Scotland got grouped. Bentancur and Uruguay got grouped. Van de Ven and Van Hecke are coming back because they went down to Morocco on penalties the other night in the knockouts.
Heartbreaking.
Pap Sarr coming back with Senegal. The game that Senegal lost to Belgium, I can't even comprehend.
That was crazy.
They were up 2-0 in the 85th minute and somehow lost it 3-2 right at the death of extra time. Which
as Spurs fans,
wild.
we wouldn't know anything about that, Andrew. Goodness gravy.
No.
I'm still spitting mad about that Super Cup to PSG. Still grumpy. That Harry Kane game today, I don't think was touched on enough. I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be the Harry Kane game against Congo. I've rarely seen a player in world football, let alone not named Messi or Ronaldo, put a team on his back and just will them to a victory like Harry Kane did against Congo today. They really offered not much going forward. The Congolese goalkeeper did a great job. He was very determined. But at the end of the day, Harry Kane's class showed up and showed out. That second goal is one that will be showed at the top of his highlight film forever, especially in an England kit. I don't know that I've ever seen a better England goal, personally. I think that one takes the cake for me. So it was cool. It was literally one of those goals that caused exclamation, even if you were watching it in a quiet place.
He's the greatest English player of all time. No question about it. I mean, Thierry Henry his jaw was on the floor, talking about the way that, like, basically saying that it's almost impossible to wrap your foot around the ball and hit it with your laces, with the side of your foot and not your laces, in the manner that he did, and place that in the top corner. Thierry Henry said he would have broken his back if he tried to do that now. Just insane. And look, I'm a self-proclaimed Pan-Africanist. I was pulling for Congo with every fiber of my being in that match, right? I will always root for any team that comes from CAF, right? No matter what, unless you're playing the United States. I just want to put that out there, right? But I have to give credit to Harry Kane. He single handedly willed his team to victory, as Todd said. Not the greatest display from England. I think they have some things they're going to have to figure out if they want to continue to progress through this tournament, right? But not only was Kane tracking back and stifling counters, he was starting attacks, he was finishing attacks. I mean, he literally Harry Kane looked at the situation and said, "Fuck it, I'll do all this shit myself." And that is not hyperbole
And
when
then
I
did
say
it.
that, and he
Yeah,
did that.
and then he went and did it. And then he went and did
He
it, and
yeah.
they're
Not
moving on.
hyperbole at all.
It's incredible.
No, and look,
I was sitting there watching Thomas Tuchel the whole time, wondering, oh gosh, have England gotten this wrong again? Like it was not working, and Harry Kane just said, "No, I got you guys. Don't worry.
I
We're at
got
least
you.
going to get
Yeah,
to the round of 16."
yeah, yeah.
But before we talk Spurs, guys, how do we feel about the U.S. now against Belgium minus Flo Balogun? Because he will be suspended for the match on Monday in Seattle against the Belgians. Obviously, the U.S. has a little bit of history in the World Cup against Belgium. They lost to them in the knockouts in 2014. I hadn't even thought about it either. This was the first U.S. knockout victory in a World Cup since 2002. The
Yep.
one that was in South Korea, which hadn't really dawned on me. But yes, of course, because there is that extra round this year, it comes up sooner. But how do we feel about a matchup against Belgium? Because I think that this one is going to be a step up, certainly, than Bosnia was.
I still think Belgium is underwhelming compared to the Belgium of old, right? I think we all know that, right? That's nothing groundbreaking to say. I With Flo Balogun, I'd feel very confident. I'm not lacking confidence, but I have questions as to what we're going to do. I think Pepe showed us against Turkey that he's not Flo Balogun, right? I think that Pepe can do a job. I I just somewhat wonder if we could see a false nine. I don't think Pochettino would do that. I think he trusts Pepe, but I think you have a Gio Reyna. I think you actually have a Weston McKennie who played a false nine almost like probably 15 games for Juventus this season and did really well doing it, right? So I'm very curious to see what Pochettino's going to do because it's Balogun and then quite a drop when we talk Pepe and Haji, right? Again, if we had full Balogun, I'd be quite confident going into this match because we are playing some really good football right now. It's extremely fluid. We are in possession. It's sometimes a 3-4-3. It's sometimes a 4-2-3-1. Sometimes it's like a 3-3-1-3 in possession, which is very interesting, right? But it's just very fluid. I sit and I watch matches and I can't really put my finger on how we're set up when we have the ball, and I think that's a really good thing, actually.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that that's a really thorough analysis of this game and where the US are at. I really do think that Flo Balogun makes the difference between us being a legitimate contender for a semifinal spot in this tournament and
Yeah.
not. And so, given the fact that we're going to be without his services for this particular match, I struggle to see where a lot of the goals are going to come from. Though there are other goal scorers in this squad. It's just so much of the goal scoring that the U.S. does is predicated on Flo Balogun's movement without the ball, in addition to what he does with the ball, and that's really the significant drop off. It is not just the finishing; it's the positioning of Ricardo Pepe, and so that's why I don't think that it's a bad shout that we may see a lot more Gio Reyna in this match. It's also I'm more concerned about what our central defense is going to do with Lukaku from about 80 minutes on. Because our guy Andrew over here made one of the most epic analogies I think that there are allegories that you could give in this in regards to a player. He referred to Romelu Lukaku as that carving knife that you only use around Christmas or Thanksgiving to carve the turkey, and it only has one use. And if you were to use it all the time, it would get dull and likely break because it's kind of old. It was your grandfather's, and you keep it around for special reasons. But if you're asking it to carve a turkey, boy, it'll carve the shit out of that turkey. And I'll tell you what, we watched Romelu Lukaku carve the shit out of some turkey today for the Belgians, and I don't know if a tired ass Tim Ream and Chris Richards are going to give the U.S. what they need against Romelu Lukaku at this stage of the tournament. I don't know. It'll be hard to see. There's a lot of goals in the Belgian team from their midfield, but not necessarily from their strike force until Lukaku comes on at the end of the game. So we'll see.
I was gonna say it might be old knife Lukaku against old turkey Ream. That we'll have to see which one wins out in that scenario. But yeah, that's what's ahead. It's exciting, and yeah, the World Cup has certainly been consuming a lot of our thoughts. I want to get into some Spurs stuff with you guys though, because a lot has actually happened in the last week or so since we last did a podcast. I want to start by getting into the goalkeeper situation a little bit at Spurs, because Spurs have signed Antonin Kinski to a new and improved contract. They announced it this week, reportedly a 5-year deal with a 1-year extension clause. And this is not something that is a surprise. I think we knew that Spurs were getting ready to hand over at least the opportunity to win the number one pair of gloves on this squad, and in doing so, they've also signed another goalkeeper along the way. Spurs signed Martin Dubravka last week on a free transfer after his contract expired at Burnley, and we're talking about a 30-year-old veteran who everyone knows and has seen in the Premier League for a while now. Of course, he was at Newcastle for a while. Comes in to presumably be the backup and give this squad some experience in the spot, because it seems like Vicario's on the way out. Another thing that would not be surprising. I think despite all of these moves, there's still links out there with Spurs and James Trafford, the young English keeper at City. And I'm wondering where all these pieces are going to fit. I think we know, but the James Trafford part of this is still kind of confusing me, Scott. And I'm curious as to why why those links would still be out there, because it almost seems like Spurs have settled the goalkeeper position going into the season with Kinski and Dubravka as 1-2. And I guess you throw in Brandon Austin into the mix as the third and the English guy.
It's really interesting, man. I thought that Kinski was De Zerbi's guy, but I think if you're going to bring in James Trafford, I don't think De Zerbi sees Kinski as the guy, because there's no way Trafford comes to Spurs if he's not guaranteed to be the number one. I mean, he's already gone through this at City, right? And I just don't see a world where he agrees to a move to Spurs if he's not the bang on, number one. Kinski, I think we all felt Kinski was decent, but also suspect and also very young, right? And then he started every match for De Zerbi, and I think I was somewhere between like, well, maybe he's the guy, maybe he's just better than Vicario, and so he's playing, right? But again, I think if we're bringing in Trafford, it tells me that De Zerbi thinks Trafford's a better option than Kinski as the number one. Kinski just penned a new deal, but again, he's very young, so we'll see. But we know that Vicario is not the guy, and we know that Brandon Austin is not the guy. So it could be the case where Brandon Austin isn't even in the pecking order when this is all said and done.
We also know that TC's boy Luka Gunter's not the guy, because he's going back out on loan to the National League.
Well,
for now.
I mean, that's
but
good.
Maybe,
I'm glad
maybe so one
time
for the future. Of course.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I look at this situation and I go, this wouldn't be the first time that Spurs carry 4 goalkeepers. So, if you're really looking at it that way, I like the Dubravka signing, as we talked about last week, because he was the best of the relegated keepers that we could get on the books for relatively inexpensive. And if the wheels fall off at Kinski, we know that Dubravka can do a job. And I like the fact that we signed him, because now he can't have a monster game for us out of fucking nowhere for a nonsense team that we should have no business losing to. Which that has happened at least a handful of times in my time as a Spurs fan that Martin Dubravka has shown up against Spurs and just absolutely dashed our hopes. So anyhow, um, I don't. I saw the James Trafford rumor today, but I don't really know. I don't really know that it's one necessary to discuss at length. I think we're not even having the conversation that we're about to have about who is actually headed through the door, Andrew. Without
Right.
Antonin Kinski, we're not. And so
No,
I don't
I
know.
completely agree with you.
It's hard for me to look at you and say, oh, 100% without a doubt, Kinski is the guy because he's still so young. But
Right.
I can definitely look at you and say Antonin Kinski is the reason why we stayed up. He and Deserby last year, and Antonin Kinski has earned the opportunity to show through his play that he is the guy. And so that's where we're at. And so I think that the Dubravka signing is one of convenience. I think the Trafford signing could be one to say, like the Scum did with they had Ramsdale and then signed Raya because they were like, well, I need something better. This is fine, but I need
He's
something
better,
better.
right? Right. And I guess the way I look at this situation going into the season is if Roberto De Zerbi wants to give Anton Kinski every chance to outright win the starter's job and be the man going into next season, I think I'm okay with that as long as he proves that he can do it. Whether or not
Right.
that is a thing long term and being as young as he is remains to be seen, but I'm okay with giving him the opportunity. And I think the Dubravka signing gives you the fallback option if that goes awry early on. You have a veteran you can lean on in that spot. When it comes to Trafford, I agree with you both. Like if he comes in, he's the guy, not only because he would require it, but because he would be the best guy, I think, in the scenario. But I just don't see the point of that if you've gone to all this trouble at this point to get what you have in place. The biggest thing for me is find the suitor for Vicario and move on with these two guys that you now have in house and see what you got from there. And that's kind of I think that's the way it's going to work out. I want to see I want to see pen to paper on all of this as we get into the meat of the season and see kind of how that works out. We mentioned Alejo Veliz last week. Just a quick mention because that did officially happen. He's officially gone back to Brazil on a permanent deal. 22 years old, and I didn't realize this until today. But do you guys know how many matches he actually played for Spurs first team?
3.
It was actually
I'm
8,
guessing.
which I was
Is it 8?
surprised at. I was surprised it
Under
was that
10.
many. It was 8 matches. And he did actually have a goal as well in the
Yeah.
Premier League against Brighton in December
Yeah,
after he
I remember
signed,
that.
which
Yeah,
I just had totally forgotten about. But yeah, he has gone. C'est la vie. That's that was what it was. Let's talk about some of the, like Todd, you alluded to it, some of the stuff that hasn't yet happened, but we believe is going to happen, or at least has been heavily reported on. Let's start with the outs and the out of Luka Vuskovic. This is a guy that we've talked about over the last month or so as, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? There's a lot of center backs in the room now, and now it really does look like he's going to Brighton for a pretty hefty fee, especially for a guy as young as he is. Scott, we haven't heard from you much on the center back situation and who they brought in, and now with Vuskovic going out. I'm curious as to your thoughts about letting, if this does come to pass, letting a player that seems to be this talented and has this much upside walk out the door for what is a massive number coming back.
yeah. Honestly, I'm not too concerned about it. I think we, you know, the club that we aspire to be, that level of club moves on players at the right time, regardless of how talented they are. I think the Spurs of old, especially the Spurs of old who like wasn't winning things, we were like very much attached to young players and players that were like, the Sunnies of the world and whatnot, just people that were near and dear to our heart. And I'm not comparing Viscovic to Sunny; there's very different examples, right? But I think my point is that historically we have been very attached to players as a club, right? And I think we hear all this, oh, he's the next greatest center back, and the top rated under 18 center back in the world, blah blah blah, right? And we felt good about that. But again, if we have aspirations to be the type of club that, again, we aspire to be, right? Maybe I'm using that word too often, but we're going to have to make these types of decisions. And if you can get $45 million for a teenager who you brought in for, a very small amount, I think it was like total of $12 million or something that we paid to sign him when we did, right? Which was actually quite a bit for a 16-year-old or whatever it was. But either way, I think it's a good piece of business, especially if he doesn't want to be here. And we have, you know, we have Van Hecke now, who looks to be a real talent. Obviously, we have Mickey, we have Romero pending. Um, Danzo looks a talent, so we're loaded at center back. And again, I think when you can get $45 million for a teenager and he doesn't want to be here, you take that and run as fast as
Well,
you can with it.
First off, it's if we're talking dollars, it's like $50 million, right? It's like 46
Mm,
million pounds, and
yeah,
that's I got laughed at in our group chat because I was like, "Give me 50 million and a 25% sell on for that guy," and you guys were like, "Oh, I think you're overvaluing Vuskovic." Well, apparently not, because we got 20% as a sell on and first rights if he wants to go and we want to buy him back. My biggest thing about this, and I've been entirely candid, shocker, on this pod when it comes to Vuskovic, his hips are stupid. Like they're still dumb, and he's going to get beat a lot over the course of the next 38 matches, assuming that the Brighton coach leaves him in that much. He got benched for Croatia after his showing against England because he got absolutely rinsed on numerous occasions. The thing is that we bought a stock at 12 and sold it at 50, and that's incredible business. The man never kicked a meaningful ball for Tottenham Hotspur. So here's
Yeah,
my thing is even if he goes on to be a great center back, his version of becoming a great center back is, in my opinion, is like a Harry Maguire or a Dan Burn. It's not a Virgil van Dijk. And so as good as Maguire and Dan Burn are, they have limitations to their game, and they'll be the first to tell you. And that's kind of where I see Vuskovic is that he has loads of ability, but there are certain things that his body cannot do that will ultimately he'll need to figure out a way to work around in order to be effective as a position. But it stands between him and that S tier center back. So for us, as Scott mentioned, we're loaded at center back. And this says to us and says to the people around, if you want to get out and you want to play, go,
yeah.
go. The best teams in the world move players on because they're not happy because they're not getting playing time. City sold Cole Palmer, right? Because he wasn't happy because he
yeah.
wasn't getting playing time. Like that stuff happens all over the place. And to have the add-ons that we got for him, so 50 million and we get 20% going forward. So, if he goes for 100 million, that sets us up very nicely on that move on. And if he's a 100 million pound player and we want to buy him back, we get the first opportunity to do so. So I don't see an L for us here, Andrew.
The only thing that gives me hesitation about this move is that Brighton are paying what Todd said they would pay a few weeks ago. Like they actually are doing that. And
Yeah.
that makes me think, oh wait, did I fuck this up? Did I misinterpret this myself? But no, I'm fine with this. I everything you guys said I agree with. Like the guy needs to move on, he needs to play, he needs to develop, and if Brighton wants to give him that chance, go for it, my friends. I'm completely down with that. And Todd, I really do agree with your assessment too. I don't think he has the speed to play long term in the Premier League in the way that we are going to want to play either. Obviously, I don't know that, but that's just from everything that I've seen from him and read. That's what the long term outlook
Well,
appears to be. So
it's the center backs that come out of as we're having the conversation now. Cornerbacks in the NFL that come out of college and can't make the turn become safeties. And that's kind
right,
of what we're talking about here is that his hips are not fast enough to make that turn, and because of that he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the catch ups. He doesn't have the raw speed like a Mickey Vandeven, and he doesn't have the quickness to turn with the best forwards. And so he has his limitations. That's kind of all I'm saying.
And look, the center back depth, as we mentioned, is there, despite the fact that like JP Van Hecke got like a billion different facial lacerations or whatever the heck he suffered in the World Cup. Like he was getting his face beat in, it seemed.
That guy looked like he was in a Rocky movie.
I know, it was unbelievable. I mean, and look, we've seen the injuries especially hit the center backs over the last few seasons. So that's the reason where I'm like, okay, I'm glad we have a stable of them now, and all of them look quality. So this move, it's doable for this team in this spot right now. And I think, as you guys mentioned, the price was absolutely right. When it comes to the midfield, gentlemen, this is where I have no idea what's going to happen. Rumors this week that Newcastle have come in for Archie Gray, but Spurs are not interested in moving Archie Gray along. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Lucas Bergvall last week, and we'll see what happens there. But in terms of the ins, all the news this week is both Matias Fernandez and Sandro Tonali appear to be on, which is, I don't know like what the words are I'm trying to come up with to describe Spurs dropping almost 200 million pounds on two midfielders over the course of a week. But that's the world we apparently now live in, Scott. Like I don't know.
Insane.
I don't know what to do with my hands or my face or my words. Like where do we go from here?
I mean, the owners are putting their money where their mouth is. 200 million on two midfielders who are Premier League proven. One is 21, the other is somewhere in his mid-20s, I think,
I
right?
think he's
I
27
don't know off
now,
the
I
top of
believe.
my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so right in his prime. Tonali is a beast. He he is he is a ball recovery specialist. He creates big chances from deep, from like a deep lying. Like it's hard to call him like a true six, right? But he's a deep lying playmaker almost who recovers the ball really well. I'm actually pulling up some stats right now, but I'm stoked about him, especially as an Italian, right? He is an absolute gem who that people are going to talk about, his ban. And I think while I will never be like dismissive of something like that, under I also believe wholeheartedly that people make mistakes, and gambling is something right now that is shoved down our throats in the sports world, right? It's every commercial, every billboard, every board that goes around the pitch. It's all gambling, right? And it looks like he went to rehab. He took his licks. He learned his lesson. He went through his recovery process, and he's back. And I have the utmost respect for anyone who's willing to go through something like that and put the work into to heal and recover. And it's something that he'll be in recovery for the rest of his life or something like that, right? But I wish him nothing but the best. And I'm really, really happy that he's going to get his move to London, and he's going to get a lot of money too. I think he'll be our highest paid player, right? But he had, I think he created 32 chances last year, and I think six big chances again from that deep lying role. And I believe he averaged like six ball recoveries a game, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty awesome. It's exactly the profile we need. I almost think of him as just a João Paulinho, but on steroids, just a much better version of João Paulinho, right? Which just probably has a lot to do with why we're not bringing him back, right? But
Not actually on steroids, by the way. We don't need another
yeah,
band.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Needs to be said. But no, he's a heightened version of João Paulinho, who's a much better ball progressor than João Paulinho is. It's like, I don't know. I don't know the comparison. I wanted to say he's like a mix between João Paulinho and someone, but I'm not quite sure who on Spurs that would be.
It's
So, but I'm stoked
it's
for
passing
Tonali.
though. Like it's passing. That's
Yeah.
what this team has needed. By the way, I
Yeah.
aged Tonali by a year. He won't be 27 until next May, so still
Right.
only
Good.
26
Okay.
years old. And it's
Okay.
passing. Like that's been the biggest thing,
Yeah.
right? CC, like this midfield needed passers last year. They didn't have any of them.
Well, this team needed passers, right? So much of it came from Romero. The big chance is the midfield didn't do any of that. We did a great job of
Romero and
recovering, but
Porro.
everyone
Those are the two guys. Yeah.
exactly. And everyone on this pod lamented the lack of our midfielders' ability to progress the ball effectively via the pass. Um, I Sandro Tonali is Italy's best player right now, if we're keeping it 100%, Scotty.
Yeah, I
And
agree,
we
100%.
just signed him. He's also, and we're going to come on and talk to Fernandez in just a moment, but Tonali is he's arguably the best midfielder in the league. He walks into any team in the country, arguably any team in football, and for him
Yeah,
to
very
come
good.
to Tottenham Hotspur is a huge deal. He will be the anchor of our midfield for the foreseeable future. And to be fair, he's going to be a hell of one half of a double pivot with Matthias Fernandez, who is a 21-year-old beast and has the ability to, again, do all things in the midfield, including pass, Andrew. So that's the one that I think that between those guys, Conor Gallagher and Bentancur, and then the smattering of an Archie Gray and a Lucas Bergvall. I think we have legitimate midfield depth for the first time in a long time, and it's really it's not just the same profile of player anymore. So plus there's we've got James Madison and Javi Simmons will eventually come back. But honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if those guys are sometimes playing off the left in a Deserby system. I think that we saw the way that he was using Conor Gallagher in the 10 to kind of press the ball at the end of the season, and that showed promise and there was really effective. I think Matthias Fernandez can do an incredible job of doing that. So I think that these two signings give us so much versatility in the midfield because they're the type of player profile that can do all the things that we need someone to do on the pitch right now.
The owners just have to sell another couple paintings. That's all that has to happen. It's not a big deal, right?
Well,
What do you make
honestly, go ahead.
What do you make of the Newcastle and the Villa fans who Villa got fined this week by the Premier League for
Yeah.
breach of fair play rules, and all of them are now bitching and moaning that Spurs are spending all this money and we're facing relegation last season. It's like, do these folks not realize that we haven't spent this money and have been stockpiling it, and also the stadium is there and
Well,
produces like, this is not rocket science to me, but I feel like every football fan just got stupid over the last couple of days when it comes to this stuff.
well, as Ange Postecoglou says, dude, Tottenham will make people do crazy things. But what what I want to say is, shouts to Flav from the Fighting Cock. He does a podcast called The Lab, and he had a gentleman on that kind of broke down how all of this spending is possible. And basically, what the gentleman said is that because Spurs didn't end up in Europe, we have the ability to spend up to 85% of our revenue on football operations. And that's not amortized. So if you spend 200 million on a player and you do it over 10 years, then you can amortize that accordingly, right? Like that's kind of how Chelsea was doing things. So they were buying all these players, not spending money. But essentially, in a given amortization, say 5 years, that gives you a small hit as opposed to the large number against that 85%. So there's this thing where there's like a buffer on top of that where you can kind of spend beyond your limit. And so you can really Spurs have the ability, but you can't do it for multiple seasons in a row. And Spurs, so literally Spurs have the ability to spend like basically 100% of their revenue. So what the clowns at Aston Villa and Newcastle are blathering on about is
United are
the
bitching
fact.
too, by the way. Let's throw them into this because
Yeah,
they were
absolutely,
in
well,
for Tonali,
absolutely
I
they are.
believe.
Absolutely they are. And Mark Goldbridge got his medicine on that, so and he's absolutely catching it across the internet right now. So that makes me happy. But they're just failing to realize that you know we have massive events at the stadium, and all of that counts as revenue for the football club. And
Yeah,
nobody wants to go and hang out at Villa Park when there's not a football match there. To be fair, right? Old Trafford is kind of a shithole. That's why you're rebuilding it. So, like, that's what we're talking about right now. Like, yeah, we were 17th, but all that really means is we get a little bit of bonus helping hand. Other clubs that are in 17th, right? Nobody's talking about the type of stadium revenue that the London stadium's pulling in for West Ham, right? These are different
No,
conversations.
especially in the
So it's
championship.
especially in the championship. So and this is what people don't necessarily understand when they're talking about Tottenham and finances is that we've set
Should have
ourselves
relegated
up.
us when you had the chance.
Should have
Is what I
relegated
say.
exactly that. Well, this is a weird thing. This is the dichotomy of Daniel Levy, right? It's because we wouldn't be in this position if Daniel Levy wasn't in charge of the football club for as many years as he was. But if
Yes,
Daniel Levy were
but
still in
also,
charge
who
of the
wouldn't be
football
doing
club,
this? Yeah,
we wouldn't be
exactly.
doing this. Exactly. So
Right.
therein lies the dichotomy of Levy. And so I think
So
that's
so we'll all
there's a
take
book
this
there's a
brief
book
moment
out
in
there that
time and just
says
embrace it.
yeah, there's a book out there that's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's just about like when it comes time to level up, you can't just keep doing the same thing you've always done. You're going to have to change stuff up. And not all of that is pretty. And oftentimes there's growing pains involved. And that's essentially what we've done, right? Spurs have leveled up. And when you do that, you get the ability to sign two, a world class and a potentially world class midfielder in the same 24-hour period.
Scott had to dip a little bit early, but before we get out of here, I do want to just touch on Spurs women as well because they made some
Yeah.
moves this week. Maika Hamano went back to Chelsea on after her
Yep.
loan expired, which was obviously expected to happen. We talked about it last week. Spurs did end up signing Victoria Pelova, the Dutch midfielder, 27 years
Yeah.
old, comes over on a free from Arsenal. This is a player who has a ton of Champions League experience and also has 71 international caps with the Netherlands. So has had an ACL tear in 2024, has played a bit sparingly since then, but has worked her way back, and just another home run of a signing for this club at this point. And then they also have done their own little backup goalkeeper swaparoo here. Spurs sold Eleanor Heaps to Brighton this week and have signed goalkeeper Selma Panengistuin. I think I got that
Well
pronunciation
done.
down.
Well, clap for Andrew, everybody.
Norwegian, 23 years old, who comes from Brann, where she played with Sinja Gopset and was, of course, coached previously by one Martin Ho. So there's a known quantity here coming in. Has already made an appearance for the Norwegian national team as well. So a younger goalkeeper kind of coming in, you would presume to be the backup, the role that Eleanor Heaps was occupying at that time. And then the other big thing I saw this week was Jess Naz making some headlines, doing an interview, and is back out on grass already training after her knee injury. So
it's great news.
Progressing, moving forward. We love all of those things. So Spurs women just continue to get the job done. It's now 5 incomings with Pelova and Panengstuin. I'm gonna just call her Selma, I think, from now on.
I think
but
that's a good
because
shout.
I've nailed that. But 5 signings already, and it's July 1st. I almost said January 1st. It's July 1st. Like the noise is just continuing to be made.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up. And first off, they're doing an excellent job rebuilding that women's squad. I think that smart signings across the board. I was impressed with their January. I was impressed with who they let go. I was impressed with who they brought in, and how this window has progressed. I don't think that Spurs fans could have asked for more than that to this point. Um, on the men's side, when it comes to the transfer window, I still expect there to be 2 to 3 more signings. I think the
Oh
one
yeah.
area, well, I think the one area, Andrew, well, I mean, beyond Tonali and Fernandez, um, the one area that we haven't addressed yet is the attacking midfield, because we still technically only have James Madison there right now because Xabi's hurt.
Mm-hmm. And
And
who knows where
Kulusevski's
Dejan
hurt.
Kulusevski's life is leading him to right now. Yeah, I have no idea.
Exactly.
Have not seen anything of that. Well, and the
we
other
don't
big one
have
too is what's going to be done at the striker position, right?
Well, and what's going to be done at the true left wing position? Like, there's a lot of things. So I would say I want an attacking midfielder, which we've been rumored with the kid from, um, from Como that previously played under the Zerbi at Dynamo Zagreb, and I think I forget his last name starts with B. I can definitely see us making a move like that. That sounds like an under the radar one that we could definitely get on board with. Saw some rumblings there. I definitely think we're going to see, either a Savino or a Marmouche. I think that the city conversation is definitely one that we're having. Um, but I mean, I've heard rumblings about Flo Balogun. I've heard
I was just
rumblings
gonna
about
say
Brian
that's
Robbery.
Yeah, the Flo Balogun one was the one, and I definitely think Flo Balogun's getting a move this summer, especially after the World
Yeah.
Cup that he's having. Red card aside, because we all know what happened with that. But it's obviously still very very early, but to know that the wheels have been churning the way that they have is really good. And also, we say it's very very early. I mean, I don't think anyone realizes that the World Cup final is going to be here in a few weeks. July 19th is the World, so we're 19 days away from the final. You know that 3 days later on that Wednesday, in fact, 3 weeks from today, Spurs are playing a behind closed door friendly against MK Dons, and that will be the first official preseason
Oh,
match. And then days later, they are off to Australia. Like the preseason will be here before we know it. We're literally
that's
3
really
weeks away
interesting.
from footballs being kicked and preseason being underway, and before you know it, I mean, heck, it's really only like a 3.5 week ramp up before the season from there. So we've got like 6 weeks to go before the games actually start counting again, which is not a lot of time.
Dude, you're right, but it is really refreshing to know that Spurs have essentially overhauled the entire spine of their squad, save the attacker,
Mm-hmm.
before July 1st or on July 1st. It's pretty impressive.
Right, and it's not like they have no options at in attack and at striker. We don't know what the final options are going to be at this
We
point. We
just
don't know
don't
who's
like
staying, who's
them.
going. Right, and we're not completely in love with them the way that we are the rest of the team and the way that it has been improved. So yeah, for sure, there's like I said, I know that the season still feels far away and everybody's still in the midst of the World Cup. But when I looked at that today, literally 3 weeks from today, Spurs are playing a preseason friendly
That's
against
crazy
MK
talk,
Dons. Like
brother.
that is, yeah, I know, man. It'll be here before you know it. We're going to be here the whole way talking about it all. Obviously, Spurs continue to make headlines. They continue to piss people off. And, we love that because I like to point and laugh at that, so that's fun. That is going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page if you haven't already. YouTube.com/Tottenham Depot is where you can find us. We put all the podcasts up there so you can look at our beautiful faces in addition to hearing our beautiful voices. If you'd like to, you can also leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. You can follow us on the socials as well. You can follow Scott at Scott G. Bird, even though he had to dip out a little early. You can follow Todd at TC_Show, and you can follow me at A Stedka. Most importantly, you can follow us at Tottenham Depot on all your social platforms. We will talk to you next week. Hopefully, the U.S. will be moving on to the quarterfinals of the World Cup. That's not a sentence I thought I was going to be saying. Until then, this has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.